We were supposed to meet for dinner. That's all it was. I was waiting at that overpriced fusion place she picked. The kind where the waiters wear suspenders and serve food on wooden boards like that's revolutionary. She told me she'd be 10 minutes late, then 20, then silence. No reply to my text, not even a sorry. Just the screen staring back at me, lit with our chat, and that last blue tick mocking me. So I paid for the wine I didn't touch and left. Driving home, I wasn't even angry, just numb. That kind of stillness where your brain wants to rage but your heart holds it in a chokehold. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic. Just figured she got caught up with work or maybe bailed to hang with her sister, again. The weird thing was my hands were steady. My thoughts weren't racing. That quiet before the storm no one ever tells you about. Our house was dark when I pulled up. Not pitch black. There was light coming from the upstairs window. Just one. The bedroom. That detail stuck in my head. And I don't know why. I walked in without turning on the hallway lights. There was a smell in the air, like perfume but not hers. Sweeter. Artificial. Someone else's presence. Like a fingerprint smudged on glass. I climbed the stairs. Slow. Careful. Like I didn't want the house to hear me. Maybe part of me already knew. The bedroom door was cracked open, and I heard her voice. That sound that used to make my heart do stupid little flips when I was still naive enough to believe she was incapable of cruelty. She was laughing. Not politely. Not out of obligation. That deep, unfiltered kind of laugh people only use when they feel completely safe. Then the quiet. And then, sorry, baby. Whispered. Soft. Unmistakable. Everything inside me went quiet. The kind of quiet where your blood forgets how to move. I pushed the door open. She was alone. Sitting on the edge of the bed. Holding her phone like it was made of glass. Her legs were crossed and her hair was tied up in a way she never does around me. She didn't look surprised to see me. Not scared. Just mildly annoyed. Oh, you're back already. No smile. No explanation. She didn't ask about dinner. She didn't ask why I was standing there like my spine had turned to ice. I didn't say a word. I walked straight to the bathroom, opened the mirror cabinet. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, I just needed something to confirm what my bones already knew. I found it behind her makeup bag. A second phone. Not her regular one. This one had a cracked screen and a glittery case. She didn't even flinch when I turned around holding it. What is this? I asked. Her lips curled, not into a smile, but something uglier. She stood up slowly, walked toward me like she was approaching a misbehaving child. You really want to do this now, she said, voice flat. I unlocked the phone. It didn't even have a passcode. Her mistake. Or maybe she thought I'd never find it. The messages hit me like a brick wall. Not just the words, but the pictures. The names. One in particular. A guy I'd met once, briefly. At a barbecue. The kind of guy who wears loafers with no socks and calls women queen like it's a brand. There were weeks' worth of messages. Coordinated lies. Mocking me. Her saying she'd be at her mom's and him replying with hotel room numbers. Compliments she never gave me. Plans for weekends she claimed she'd be working. I dropped the phone. She didn't move. So, she said, arms crossed. What now? No apology. No fear. No shame. Just that. A challenge. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I didn't recognize the woman in front of me. She was wearing the necklace I bought her on our 3rd anniversary, and it suddenly looked wrong on her. Like it didn't belong anymore. You lied to me, I said, and my voice didn't even shake. Her response? A shrug. And? I had no plan. No speech. Just a storm brewing where my chest used to be. This wasn't heartbreak. Not yet. It was the unraveling. And it had only just begun. She walked past me like I was an empty chair. Picked up the second phone, casually wiped the screen with her sleeve, and tossed it into her purse like it was a receipt she meant to throw out. I didn't move. My hands were still at my sides, open, stupid, like they were waiting to catch something that was already broken. You're not going to say anything else? I asked, but it came out more like a statement than a question. She rolled her eyes. What do you want, Dan? A speech? You found it. Congratulations. You win. You win. I repeated, blinking like she'd just spoken code. What the hell are you even saying? Oh please, she scoffed. Don't act like some tragic saint. I'm not the first woman to get bored. There it was. That word. Bored. Like our life together was a waiting room. Like I was a placeholder. Like the 6 years I spent building something with her. Every road trip, every fight, every stupid little compromise were just background noise to whatever movie she thought she was starring in. I stepped forward, close enough to see that her mascara was smudged. Not from crying, she hadn't cried. From laughing, maybe, or something else. Who is he? I asked even though I already knew. She gave a little laugh through her nose. That's what you're going to focus on? His name. His name. Where you met. How long? Why? Why? She blinked like the concept was foreign to her. Because I wanted to. Because I felt like I was dying in this house. With your routines and your quiet dinners and your tired shirts. Because he looked at me like I was someone worth undressing. Not just someone to come home to. The room spun. You're unbelievable, I whispered. No, she said sharply, stepping closer now, voice rising. What's unbelievable is how blind you were. You come home every day thinking everything's fine, thinking you're some kind of dream husband. You haven't touched me in weeks, Dan. Because you were always somewhere else, I snapped. You shut down. You disappeared behind that screen. You always had an excuse. Because I had to. Because the only way I could breathe was to find something outside of you. I didn't say anything for a moment. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. My nails dug into my palms. Every cell in me screamed to shout, to throw something, to make noise. But I didn't. I just stared at her and saw a stranger in her place. You lied, I said again, but softer. You didn't even try to fix it. You just gave up. She looked at me like she was bored again. Like I was the one being dramatic. You want a cookie for sticking around longer than I did? She asked. I turned around, walked to the dresser, opened the top drawer where I kept every letter she ever wrote me. Anniversary notes. Random sticky notes left on the fridge. I picked one. A small piece of paper that said, "You're my favorite place to come home to." I held it up to her. When did this stop being true? She looked at it. No emotion. No recognition. I don't know, she said, yawning. A long time ago. I let the note fall to the floor. Then quietly, did you ever love me? She took a second longer than she should have. I thought I did, she said finally. But maybe I just loved not being alone. Something in me cracked. Not snapped, cracked. A silent, slow split that doesn't hurt at first. Just leaves you hollow. Then she turned her back to me, grabbed her purse, and walked out of the room without another word. She didn't slam the door. Didn't apologize. Didn't even say goodbye. And just like that, the woman I thought I married was gone. Not physically. Not yet. But gone all the same. She didn't come home that night. I sat on the edge of the bed for hours, not doing anything. Not checking my phone. Not calling anyone. Not even thinking clearly. Just sitting. Staring at the spot where she'd stood when she said, I just loved not being alone. That sentence wouldn't leave my head. It echoed like someone screaming in an empty tunnel. Over and over until the words didn't sound like words anymore. I didn't cry. I expected to, I really did. But there was nothing. Not sadness. Not even rage. Just a kind of vacuum, like my body had shut off every switch and decided to wait until something made sense again. Around 3 a.m. I finally moved. I went downstairs, opened a beer, sat on the floor in the kitchen with my back against the cabinets like some half-broken cliché. That's when I started opening every drawer, every cabinet, every bag she'd left behind. I don't know why. Part of me was looking for more. More phones, more messages, more pieces of the truth she didn't bother to give me. I found a receipt. A stupid receipt. It was crumpled in the bottom of a tote bag she used for groceries. A hotel bar tab, 3 nights ago. 2 drinks, her name printed on the room check slip. And the name of the hotel, a place on the other side of town, the kind we always joked was for cheating husbands and bad decisions. I stared at the paper. The timestamp was almost to the minute when she told me she was staying late for a team meeting. I remember because I offered to pick her up. And she said, "Don't bother. It'll go late." I sat there, gripping that little receipt like it was a confession. Like it was alive. That's when the anger showed up. Not like fire. Not loud. It was colder. Like ice in my throat. Like my fingers didn't belong to me. I wasn't going to confront her. Not then. But I needed to know how deep it went. So I started digging. I logged into the shared laptop. The one she rarely used anymore but hadn't wiped. Email. Calendar. Notes. Everything was there, waiting. She was lazy. Or maybe arrogant. Or maybe she wanted to get caught and just didn't have the guts to admit it. There were emails. Old ones. Arranging meetups. Fake meetings she put on the calendar as cover. There was even a document she titled Catering Budget that was just a list of dates, initials, and dollar amounts, money she'd spent, probably on rooms, drinks, dinners. He had a nickname. T, just that. But then I found something else. A message chain saved in a draft folder, not sent, not deleted. To him. It said, I don't care anymore. If he finds out, he finds out. I'm done pretending. I'm not his anymore. The date? 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago she looked me in the eyes and told me she was just tired from work. She let me cook dinner for her, rub her shoulders, tell her I loved her before she fell asleep next to me like everything was fine. Like everything wasn't a rotting lie. I went back upstairs, still holding the receipt. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined her in that hotel room in a robe, laughing that same unfiltered laugh I'd heard earlier. Only this time, I saw her look up at him with the eyes that used to be mine. And that was the first time something actually hurt. Not the betrayal itself, but the fact that she never gave me the chance to fix whatever had broken. She just handed it all to someone else and walked away from me while I was still reaching for her. At 6 a.m., I heard her key in the door. She walked in like nothing happened. Tossed her bag on the couch, checked her phone, and headed toward the stairs. I stepped into the hallway before she could see me. She flinched when she realized I was standing there. You waited up? She asked, mildly surprised. Not concerned. Not guilty. I held up the receipt. Her face didn't even twitch. You going to keep snooping through my stuff? She said, deadpan. I'm going to keep looking until I understand why the hell you chose this over us, I snapped. Oh please, she hissed. There is no us, Dan. There hasn't been for a long time. You're just the last one to admit it. No, I said. I was the only one trying to fix it. You were already gone. You just didn't have the spine to leave first. Her eyes narrowed. Don't act like a victim. You didn't notice me slipping because you weren't paying attention. I noticed, I growled. I noticed everything. You just stopped giving a damn if I did. She took a deep breath. Crossed her arms. You want to fight, Dan? Or you want to be adults and figure out what comes next? And there it was. The beginning of the end, she said, let's be adults. I stood there in the hallway, still holding the receipt in one hand, still reeling from how fast she pivoted from caught to cold. No apology. No remorse. No flicker of the woman I used to know behind her eyes. So I asked her something that had been boiling under my skin since I found that second phone. Was there anyone else before him? She didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. Does it matter? That answer sucked the air out of the room. Was there? I repeated, quieter this time, like maybe if I asked gently, she'd show an ounce of humanity. She tilted her head and gave a slow, infuriating shrug. There were moments. Nothing serious. Moments. I echoed. She looked right at me and said, I didn't write them down, Dan. I'm not keeping score. I felt something shift behind my ribs. Something small and important that snapped without sound. She walked past me into the kitchen, grabbed a glass from the cupboard, poured herself water like she was back from a jog. So now what? I asked, still frozen in place. I want to be civil, she said, sipping like she hadn't just detonated our life. I don't want drama. You think this is about drama? I was laughing now, but there was no joy in it. You've been lying to me for God knows how long, and you want this to be civil? Yes, she said simply. I don't want to fight. I just want us to be realistic. The word realistic felt like a slap. Then be realistic with me, I said, stepping into the kitchen, my voice sharpening. Tell me the truth. Tell me when this started. Tell me how long you've been looking me in the eyes and lying through your teeth. She sighed, theatrically. Like this conversation was a burden she didn't ask for. Fine, she said. You really want the whole thing? I nodded. Last year, around October, I felt my throat tighten. October, that was when her aunt passed away. She'd cried into my shoulder for 2 nights straight. I took time off work to help her through it. I held her while she sobbed. We picked out a frame together for the memorial photo. She must have seen the realization hit me because she looked away. Was he there? Then, I asked, afraid of the answer. She hesitated. Not there exactly, but I talked to him. He helped me cope. You mean he replaced me? She didn't correct me. I turned away, pressing my palms against the countertop just to stay grounded. You could have told me, I said. I didn't want to hurt you. A humorless laugh escaped me. You didn't want to hurt me? I turned back to her. You burned our life to the ground behind my back. You gaslit me for months. You slept next to me while texting him. What exactly do you call that if not hurting me? She slammed her glass on the counter. Not hard enough to break, but enough to get my attention. Because if I told you, you would have begged me to stay. You would have made it a whole thing. Guilt, apologies, promises. I didn't want that. I stared at her like I was seeing her for the first time. And maybe I was. You didn't want to be accountable, I said. You wanted to cheat and still get to walk out clean. She didn't deny it. I could feel the last threads snapping. The part of me that still wanted an explanation. A reason, something to patch the bleeding. That part was dying fast. You want out, I said. Fine. But you don't get to pretend you did this with grace. You lied. You manipulated. You used me. She crossed her arms, eyes narrowing again. And you were boring, she hissed. My chest stung like she slapped me. But that was worse. It was surgical. You made everything about routine and comfort. Like I was your pet, not your wife. I wanted passion, Dan. Surprise. Heat. You gave me safety. I don't want safe anymore. Then you don't want love, I said flatly. No, she whispered. I want more. She brushed past me again. Like this was done. Like I was dismissed. I didn't stop her this time. I just watched as she went upstairs and closed the door. Our door, for what might have been the last time. And I stood in the ruins of my own kitchen, holding a hotel receipt like it was the last piece of a map to a place I'd never find again. She didn't leave that morning. That's what threw me. I thought she'd pack a bag, slam a door, leave me in silence and dust. But no. She came downstairs 2 hours later in leggings and a hoodie, sipping coffee, scrolling through her phone like it was just another Thursday. She even asked if I was going to work. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have one, but because whatever I would have said would have come out in the wrong language, one made of splinters, fire, and disbelief. She sat at the dining table and opened her laptop. She had the gall to start replying to emails. This woman, who had just torched our marriage down to its nails, was now scheduling Zoom calls. I watched her like I was observing a stranger who had stolen my wife's body. She caught me staring and gave this dry, deadpan, "What? What are you doing?" I asked. She raised an eyebrow. "Working. You're working. I have clients, Dan. This doesn't stop just because you're feeling emotional." There it was again, you're feeling emotional, like that was the real offense. Like I was the unstable one for reacting to betrayal like a person instead of an office memo. "Why are you still here?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Because I live here. Until we figure out what's next, I'm not just going to disappear." "Figure out what's next?" I repeated. "What's next is you leave. Today." Now she looked up. "I'm not being kicked out like some mistress in a soap opera. This is still my house too. You want to talk about fairness now?" I was standing. My hands were shaking, not with rage, but from holding too much of it in. "You think you get to cheat, lie, disrespect me, and get the comfort of staying here while I try to pick pieces of my sanity off the floor?" She didn't blink. "You're not the only one going through something, Dan." I laughed. It came out cracked. "What are you going through, exactly?" I asked. "Buyer's remorse? You had me, you had him, and now you're juggling this like it's a game with no stakes." "I'm trying to transition peacefully," she said, tone steady like she was delivering a TED Talk. I want this to be smooth. You don't get to decide what smooth looks like after dragging me through a graveyard, I shot back. We stared at each other. Her face was hard, cold. Not once did she flinch. Not once did she look sad or sorry or even slightly aware of the damage she'd done. She was steel now. Not the forged kind. The cheap, hollow kind that dents and rusts the second you apply pressure. I took a breath. Then another. You need to leave, I said again. If not for me, for whatever shred of dignity you have left. And go where? She asked, leaning back. To a friend's couch? Move in with him? That's what you want? So you can imagine me in his bed every night while you're here sulking in your man cave. My jaw clenched. You already were in his bed, I said. What difference does it make now? She exhaled sharply and stood. You know what? Fine. I'll go. But don't pretend this is some moral high ground, Dan. You weren't exactly thrilling to be married to. You stopped being curious about me years ago. You stopped seeing me. No, I said slowly. I trusted you. I let myself believe you were still in this. That's not boring. That's loyalty. She grabbed her keys. You want me gone? I'll be gone. Take your things, I said. I'll come back for them. No, I snapped. Take them now or don't come back at all. For the first time, she hesitated. Just a flicker. Just long enough for me to see that there was something underneath all that ice. Not regret. Just inconvenience. She didn't plan on packing today. She sighed. You're making this harder than it needs to be. You made this impossible the moment you decided to crawl into someone else's bed and lie about it to my face. She stared at me. That silence where neither of us would give. Then she turned and headed upstairs. 40 minutes later, she came down with 2 bags. Not all her things, but enough. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't cry. She just walked out. I stood by the window watching her pull out of the driveway. And the second her car disappeared around the corner, my knees gave out. I sank to the floor, and for the first time since it all began, I broke. I didn't scream. I didn't punch walls. I just sat there, sobbing into my own hands, realizing that the person I had built my world around had been chiseling her escape route for over a year. And the worst part? She walked away like she'd never even lived here. The house changed the second she left. It wasn't anything dramatic, no slammed doors, no shattered glass, but the air was different. Heavier. Staler. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I stood in the middle of the living room for what felt like an hour, just staring at nothing, trying to understand how it was possible that silence could feel this loud. There were traces of her everywhere. A scarf thrown over the banister. Her mug still sitting on the counter, coffee half finished. The scent of her perfume embedded in the couch pillows. I should have grabbed a garbage bag and started clearing it all out. Burned every damn memory like a cleansing ritual. Instead, I sat down in her usual spot on the couch. And that's when I saw the folder. It was wedged between the cushions. A manila folder with my name written on the front in her handwriting. I opened it expecting legal papers, maybe divorce forms. But no, inside were printouts of emails. Not hers. Mine. First, I didn't get it. Then it clicked. She'd been reading my emails. For who knows how long. There were notes I'd sent to a coworker. Innocent stuff. Mostly project updates. Couple of dumb memes. One email where I mentioned having a rough week at home and my colleague replied, "Hope you're hanging in there. Let me know if you ever need to vent." That was it. No flirting. No innuendo. But she had highlighted that line. She was looking for ammunition. Building a case. Just in case she ever needed to say, "See? He wasn't perfect either." There was even a printed message from my sister. A private one. We'd been talking about how Megan had been distant lately, how I didn't know what to do. She must have read that months ago. And said nothing. I dropped the folder on the floor and felt the nausea roll in. Not because she'd gone through my stuff, no, that was the least of it, but because she'd planned this. Not just the cheating. The exit. The manipulation. The control. She wanted to make sure when the story got told, she could make me look just blurred enough around the edges to justify what she did. She wasn't just leaving. She was rewriting the narrative. I stood up, walked into my bedroom and started gathering her things. Not out of rage. Just necessity. Drawer by drawer, I filled garbage bags with what she left behind. Makeup, clothes, trinkets, old birthday cards she never hung up. I moved like a machine. dead behind the eyes. If I stopped to feel it, I wouldn't get back up again. Then I found something else. A small box tucked in the back of her closet. Underneath an old winter coat. Inside, photographs. Not of us. Not of family. Of him. Some candid, some selfies. One in particular caught my breath. A picture of them sitting on a hotel bed, both holding wine glasses, her head on his shoulder. Her face was relaxed, peaceful, like I'd never seen her in the last year. She looked happy. I dropped the photo back in the box and closed it. This wasn't about mistakes. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a slow betrayal. Strategic. Methodical. She'd built a second life in the shadows of our first and only came clean when I turned the lights on. I spent the rest of the night on the floor of the guest room, unable to sleep in our bed. The bed where she texted him goodnight while I snored beside her. The bed where I once thought we'd grow old together. The next morning I called my lawyer. I didn't even know what I was going to say. Just needed someone to hear my voice and understand what I meant when I said, "It's over." She texted me later that afternoon. "I'll come get the rest of my stuff this weekend. Please don't make it dramatic. No greeting. No emotion. Just cold logistics." Like she was picking up dry cleaning. I stared at that message for a long time, then typed one line, "Don't bother. It'll be waiting outside." She read it immediately. No reply. And that was the first time I felt something close to peace. Because for the first time, she didn't have the last word. Saturday came. I spent the morning dragging every bag, every box, every last reminder of her into the garage. I stacked them neatly by the door, double-checked that nothing was left behind, and stood there in silence staring at it all. 6 years of shared space reduced to plastic bins and duffel bags. It looked smaller than I expected. Lighter. The sky was gray. Rain threatening but never falling. Perfect weather for watching something end. At 3:17 p.m. she pulled into the driveway. She didn't get out immediately. Just sat there, engine running, sunglasses on. I watched from the window like a ghost, detached, distant. I couldn't bring myself to go outside. Not to talk. Not to look her in the eyes again. I'd already done too much of that. Finally, she stepped out. She was dressed like she was going to brunch. Tight jeans, low heels, oversized sweater that probably wasn't hers. Hair done. Makeup clean. No trace of the storm she left behind. If you didn't know, you'd think she was picking up forgotten shoes after a sleepover. She opened the garage, glanced at the bags, then pulled out her phone. I heard the buzz from the counter. I didn't check it. Instead, I opened the front door and leaned on the frame. "Everything's there," I called out. She turned toward me. "You could have at least let me come in." "No," I said. "You already took what mattered. The rest is just fabric and weight." She smiled. "A small, cruel thing. Still dramatic, huh?" "No," I said. "Just finally done performing." She took a step forward, then hesitated. "I didn't come here to fight." "Good. Because there's nothing left to win." A pause. Then she said something I didn't expect. I told him I needed space. I stared at her. My heart didn't skip. My breath didn't catch. I didn't ask why. I didn't give her the satisfaction of knowing whether that stirred anything in me. Instead, I just said, "Congratulations." She looked at the bags again. "You went through my stuff. I was looking for what you left behind, not what you packed. And I didn't find you in any of it." She didn't respond. Just shifted her weight, ran a hand through her hair like she was bored. "You know," she said, "there were moments where I almost told you the truth. I didn't think you'd understand." "No," I said. "You didn't think I'd let you keep doing it after I understood." She exhaled, slow. "You really hate me now, don't you?" I thought about that. The easy answer was yes. It would have made sense. But what I felt wasn't hate. It was emptier than that. Something quieter. Like watching a book close for the last time, knowing you'll never open it again, not because it was bad, but because the ending changed everything before it. "No," I said. "I don't hate you." She blinked. "I just finally see you." She didn't reply. Just nodded slowly as if that hurt more than yelling ever could. She turned back to her car, opened the trunk, and began loading her things. I watched her for a few more seconds. Then I went back inside and closed the door. Not in anger. Just finality. When I heard the garage door shut again and her engine start, I didn't follow her to the window. I sat at the dining table and opened the folder she'd left behind with the emails. I tore each page in half. Then again until they were just confetti on the floor. Then I swept them into the trash without ceremony. And I stood there in my own house, surrounded by silence she couldn't stain anymore. I thought I'd feel broken when she left. But all I felt was room. Room to breathe. Room to heal. Room to rebuild without her shadow pressing down on my shoulders. She thought she'd win by leaving. That walking away would give her power. But I realized something she never did. She didn't leave me empty. She left me free. The following days were brutal in their own quiet way. There was no big collapse. No chaos. Just absence. Like the echo after a song ends and you're left with your own breathing, louder than it should be. I kept walking into rooms expecting her to be there. Her coat on the hook. Her keys on the counter. The slight hum of her voice from the bathroom as she half sang while putting on makeup she never wore for me anymore. None of it was there. But the habits stuck around, haunting me. At one point, I opened the fridge to grab milk and found the almond creamer she always swore she hated but kept buying anyway. I stared at it like it could answer a question I didn't know how to ask. Then I threw it out, followed by everything she'd touched, her teas, her vitamins, the frozen meals with her stupid color-coded labels. It wasn't anger. It was survival. A purge of the invisible things that still whispered her name every time I let my guard down. I told almost no one. It wasn't shame, I hadn't done anything wrong, but the words were too heavy to carry out loud. Every time I imagined telling a friend, I pictured the pity in their eyes. The questions. The suggestions. The maybe she was just confused takes from people who never watched their partner vanish from the inside out while still sitting right beside them. My sister was the exception. I called her late that Sunday night. Said the words quick like ripping off gauze. She left. There was someone else. It's over. There was a pause, then her voice gentle but sharp. That awful feeling in your chest right now? That's not grief. That's your body remembering how to be alone again. And she was right. That night I made it through without breaking. For the first time I didn't stare at the ceiling begging for sleep that wouldn't come. I lay there with the fan humming above me and realized how strange it was that silence could become a comfort again. But peace didn't come without interruption. The next morning she called me. I didn't answer. It rang. Then rang again. A few minutes later a message popped up. I just need to talk. Not about us. Just talk. Please. I stared at it. Not because I considered responding, but because that word please looked out of place coming from her. Like it belonged to someone she hadn't been in a long time. I didn't respond. 2 hours later she showed up. She knocked once like she had a right to do it. I opened the door not because I wanted to but because curiosity's a strange thing. You want to see if the villain in your story still looks like a person. She stood there in jeans and a hoodie, hair up, no makeup. The most her she'd looked in months. I waited. No greeting. No hug. Nothing warm. I shouldn't be here, she said, voice small. You're right, I replied. You shouldn't. She glanced over her shoulder like someone might be watching. I had a panic attack last night. I called him. He didn't pick up. I didn't say a word. And I realized you would've. There it was. The hook. The beginning of a trap wrapped in nostalgia. I'm not your emergency exit anymore, I said. She nodded, but her eyes were searching, still trying to find the old version of me. The one who would have pulled her in, poured her a glass of water, sat with her until her hands stopped shaking. That man was still here, but not for her anymore. I just needed to say that, she whispered. Then you've said it. A long silence. I'm sorry, she said finally. For real. Not for how it ended, but for how I made you doubt yourself while it was happening. You didn't deserve that. I nodded. Okay. That was all I gave her. Not forgiveness. Not a conversation. Just that one word. She turned to go. Paused halfway down the porch. Looked back. Take care of yourself, Dan. I am, I said. She left. Again. But this time I didn't watch her car disappear. I closed the door, locked it, and turned my phone off. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the urge to cry or scream or ask why. I just felt still. It's strange how fast the absence of someone becomes the architecture of your new normal. 2 weeks passed. No calls. No texts. No emails. The silence that once clawed at me now tucked itself neatly into my routines. I'd wake up, make coffee for one, walk through a quieter house, and feel honestly relieved. She didn't come back for anything else. She didn't ask about the cat we never got around to adopting. She didn't ask how I was doing. I think she knew the answer. She was just hoping I'd still be too bruised to give it. But something else happened. Something I didn't see coming. I started remembering everything. Not the good parts. Those were buried. No, what came back were the lies she told before the big one. The smaller fractures. Things I had ignored. Dismissed. Forgiven because I was in love with a version of her that no longer existed. There was that time she said she had a girls' night, but came home reeking of cologne. She laughed it off. Said it was probably from hugging her friend's new boyfriend. I didn't press. I remember brushing her hair behind her ear that night and saying, "I trust you." Or the vacation she canceled last minute. Said work needed her too badly. I booked time off. Ended up spending 3 days alone in a cabin we were supposed to share. She texted once a day. I didn't even hear her voice until she came home. Said she was burned out and exhausted. Now I know why she came back tanned. And then there were the questions she never answered. The way she changed her passwords without telling me. The way she always tilted her phone away when she texted. The way she suddenly became too tired for intimacy but would spend hours on her phone in the bathroom. I was never suspicious. Not because I was blind. Because I believed her. That's what made it sting. Not that she cheated. Not that she left. But that she made a fool out of my trust and did it so effortlessly. One night I found myself going through old photos, not for nostalgia, but because I was looking for something real. Something I hadn't manufactured in my head. What I saw instead was a timeline of erasure. Her smile became more posed. Her hand slowly stopped resting on my arm. Her eyes, once so connected to mine, began drifting somewhere else. Frame by frame, she disappeared from us while I kept grinning like a man unaware the building was on fire. I sat there, phone in hand, and whispered, "You were already gone, weren't you?" And maybe the hardest part? I still missed her sometimes. Not who she became, but who I thought she was. The girl I met on that rainy day at the bookstore who told me she hated small talk and loved thunderstorms. The girl who made me feel like I was enough just by sitting across the table from her. That girl was dead. Or maybe never real. But my heart, slow and stubborn, still set a place for her at the table. Grief is strange like that. It doesn't always mourn the person, it mourns the idea. The version of them you built inside yourself. The story you told when the truth was too painful. That night, I lit a fire in the fireplace and sat across from it with a box of old letters. Some were from her. Some were from me. I read them all one last time, then fed them into the flames. Each one curled and turned to ash. And as I watched the ink vanish into orange, I felt it. The shift. The slow, undeniable unraveling of something I'd been gripping too tightly. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a man who lost his wife. I felt like a man who had just gotten himself back. 3 months. That's how long it's been since she walked out of this house and left me with the wreckage of a life I thought was real. It feels longer years, maybe. Grief does that. Stretches time until everything before it feels distant and scripted. Like a memory from someone else's life. I don't think about her every day anymore. And when I do, it doesn't feel like getting punched in the ribs. It's more like hearing a song you used to love before you knew what it was really about. There's a pang, sure, but it passes. I didn't beg her to come back. I didn't stalk her socials or show up where she worked or spiral into some cinematic collapse. I just let her go. That's what she never expected. She thought she'd haunt me, that she'd be the scar I picked at for years. Maybe she thought I'd stay stuck in the moment I found that second phone, replaying her lies on loop. But instead, I got angry, then exhausted, then free. There was no grand revenge, no dramatic glow-up, just slow, deliberate healing. I went back to the gym, not to reinvent myself, just to feel like I belonged in my own skin again. I started journaling, not for her, for me, to sort the chaos she left behind. I reconnected with people I'd quietly distanced myself from because she never liked them. Turns out they noticed, and they were still there. And one day, In the middle of doing laundry, something as ordinary and stupid as folding socks, I realized, I don't miss her. Not really. Not anymore. I miss what she was supposed to be. What we were supposed to be. But I don't miss her. Because now I see her clearly. The lies weren't just what she did behind my back. They were in the way she looked at me while she did it. The quiet cruelty of pretending everything was fine while already planning her exit. That's the part one still carry. Not the betrayal but the performance. Knowing that while I was fighting for us, she was rehearsing her goodbye. She reached out once more. A short message, "I hope you're okay." I didn't answer, not out of malice, but because I didn't owe her closure. She made her choices. She took her swing at freedom and left me buried in the collapse. I dug myself out without her. So whatever comfort she was looking for, she'll have to find it in the arms of the man she threw away everything for. And me? I'm okay. More than okay, actually. I've learned to breathe in spaces she used to fill with tension. I've rediscovered the luxury of peace. I sleep better. I laugh more. I trust myself again. I've started writing music again, something I hadn't touched since our 3rd year together. She said it made the house too noisy. But now I fill the rooms with sound and there's no one telling me to turn it down. And if I ever fall in love again, and I will, it'll be with someone who doesn't treat loyalty like a burden. Someone who sees love not as something to escape, but something to build. So here's what I'll say to anyone going through what I went through. If you feel it in your gut, you're not crazy. If they make you question your reality, they already know they're lying. And if they look you in the eyes and say, "Sorry, baby," while their hands are still hiding the truth, run. Because trust doesn't break all at once. It erodes one whispered lie at a time. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm just done mistaking convenience for love. And from now on, I won't settle for someone who needs to burn me to feel warm. Dan, not her husband anymore, the end. Let me know if you want a sequel or another story in this style.